Good evening. Welcome to the Shemer Honors. I'm Chris Orkill.
And I'm Shauna James. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 7th Shemer Honors event.
Every year, the Shemer Art Center selects one Arizona artist to recognize who has a successful career and given back to the community. This is just one way we facilitate our mission.
The Shemer Art Center was originally donated to the City of Phoenix in 1984 by Martha Shemer, and its mission has always been to support and showcase Arizona artists. Tonight, we will have the opportunity to learn more about our honoree and her 40-plus year career as an Arizona artist, including a look at her journey, her philosophy, and her work over the years, including the exhibition we have now on display at the Shemer Art Center.
Absolutely. As we have an exciting program ahead, and we are so glad to have the opportunity to recognize this artist and her artwork and hold our Shemer Honors event this year again, both virtually and in person. We have a lot of people to thank who have helped us make tonight possible. But before we get started, why don't you tell everyone a little more about the Shemer?
Sure. As we mentioned earlier, the Shemer Art Center was donated to the City of Phoenix in 1984 by Martha Shemer. As a successful real estate investor, she wanted to give back to the community. She wanted to find a specific place where people could gather. She saw this once private residence at the base of Camelback Mountain, and not long after a call to the City of Phoenix, the Shemer Art Center was established. Today, the Shemer Art Center serves as a cultural center for all ages. On a daily basis, we offer visual art classes. On the weekends, we offer workshops, and in the evenings, we either hold a pottery or wine and watercolor class, or we might have an art history lecture or an artist cafe. During the year, we have a full exhibition schedule, up to 10 per year, of changing visual art exhibitions. In the spring, we present 4 community events: our Furry Friends Fine Arts Festival, an animal-themed event that was just named Best Art Festival by the Phoenix New Times. Our Art in the Garden event in April is accompanied by our sparkling tea party on our back patio. In the fall, we have our Shemer Arizona Arts Festival, which has been held for over 35 years on the front lawn on the first weekend in November. And of course, we have our Shemer Honors event.
I am always surprised at how many activities we have happening here at the Shemer Art Center, and there is definitely something for everyone here. As you said, this year we are thankful to be able to gather again outside for our annual Shemer Honors event. So let's get started. Tell us about the honors.
Our Shemer Honors event was created in 2016, similar to the Kennedy Honors program. Each year, the Shemer Art Center selects one Arizona artist to recognize who has been successful in their career, made an artistic and cultural impact, and given back to the state. Since 2016, we have had the privilege of highlighting 6 Arizona artists. These artists include Angela Tassoni, Jim Wade, Merrill Mahaffey, Bill Nebaker, Beth Ames Schwartz, and last year, Mark Klett.
Tonight, we add our 7th name to this impressive list of artists, which of whom have achieved great success in his or her careers, been recognized for his or her impact on the arts in Arizona, and given back to the state.
As we prepare to announce tonight's honoree, we would like to first start by thanking everyone who is attending or supporting our event. A full list of sponsors will be shown at the end of tonight's program. But in particular, we would like to thank our presenting sponsor, Trainer HL, and our honorary chairs, Oscar de la Salas and Gary Jackson. We would also like to thank Lisa Setti of Lisa Setti Gallery and Sam Pillsbury of Pillsbury Wine Company.
Okay, now for the moment we've all been waiting for. We are pleased to introduce you to an artist who we believe is an inspiration to all artists, especially those who are here based in Arizona.
Absolutely. Our 2022 Shemer Honor honoree was selected by the Shemer Art Center as an artist who exemplifies the values of this event. Possessing a deep love of the natural world, this artist has hiked and camped in many of the wild places and national parks of the Southwest. These desert walks renew her sense of awe in the face of the enormity of the landscapes, the radiance of the harsh environment, and the delicate calibrations of these fragile ecosystems. They also provide her material: seed pods, insect wings, cactus roots, bleached animal bones, leaves, grasses, and flowers. Carefully organizing these organic elements into shapes, patterns, and compositions, she casts them in resin.
Her work immortalizes and celebrates that which we all too often dismiss and reveals a luminous beauty in the ignored, overlooked, and stepped upon. Her precise formal designs lead the viewer to contemplate the infinitely large, calling to mind the cosmos of stars and planets, as well as the impossibly small, alluding to cellular and crystalline structures. It is at once deeply personal and utterly universal.
This year's artist is largely self-taught. She apprenticed with artist James Hubble in San Diego in her early 20s and has since spent decades developing and perfecting her techniques. She was awarded the Arlene and Morton Sculpt Contemporary Forum Art Award by the Phoenix Art Museum in 2010. Her work can be found in select collections, including the Phoenix Art Museum, Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art, Tucson Museum of Art, and the San Jose Museum of Art. For the past 3 decades, she has been represented by Lisa Setti Gallery. We are pleased that this artist will now add the Shemer Art Center to her impressive list of accomplishments and exhibitions. In fact, her exhibition will be on display at the Shemer Art Center through January 5th, 2023. At this time, we would like to honor and introduce you to our 2022 Shemer Honors honoree, Mayme Kratz.
I thought I wanted to be a surgeon. We had a pond out front, and one of the things that I would do is go fishing every day. And I would catch bluegill and I would catch catfish, and then I would exchange their livers and sew them back up because I thought I needed that experience if I was going to do it later on. I picture the work happening, and I need to get all of the chapters written, and that's what it's about. It's like I'm already gone, but the chapters aren't finished yet, and I've kind of evaporated into this place where I'm only here to do the work. Well, my studio's down in a really rough area of Phoenix, on the edge of an overpass and around the corner from what's called CAS, or what we refer to as the homeless campus. Between the planes and the train and the overpass and the salvage yard, I'm in a vortex. You know, I'm right in the center of all of that, and there's an energy that's nice about that. I knew when I was 11 years old that there was something that I needed to say or needed to do. It was a sense of destiny. That's the only way I could explain it. And I remember feeling sick with fear and apprehension and the not knowing exactly what it was going to be. I think I understood that it would have something to do with being an artist. And I went to bed for a couple of weeks because I had to think about it. I had to be still, and I didn't want anything to interfere with it. A large part of my childhood was spent burying things and then digging them back up. I had pets that would pass away. I'd have animals I would find out in the wilderness, and I'd bury them, and then I'd think, well, what if they're not really dead? What if I made a mistake? So I go back and look at them again to see what was there. And I think it was about 10 years ago that I realized that really what I'm doing now is the same thing. Well, I have always been interested in the idea that something in us continues on even when the flesh isn't here any longer. So I like to think that our energy continues on, that something in us continues on. And that's what I was looking for when I was a child, because I thought that I was going to miss something. I thought somehow or other there was going to be some transformation, some visual evidence of a continuum, and I didn't want to, I wanted to know what that was. Beginning is always the scariest part, something blank. But in a way, I already see something inside of this, so that's kind of leading me. I usually work in squares, and I thought that this shape may bring on something new, which it has actually, but it's kind of reinforced this relationship I have with landscape and my unwillingness to completely let it go. Sometimes walking out in nature makes a big difference. It'll jog something loose. I think I have a sense of like a memory from somewhere, a memory of some sort of childhood landscape, something that continues to haunt me all the time. And it's always nocturnal because I spent so much time outside as a kid. And the landscape seems to always be there in my work, even if I hide it. Sometimes it disappears completely, but the fact that I know that it's there is all that really is needed, I think. We lived in a tiny little house out in the country. And the only mentors I had was James Hubble. James was considered different. I was considered weird too. He lived down the street from my parents, and I could see somebody that had a creative life. He is a poet, a painter, a sculptor, and fearless when it comes to materials. And that was who I studied with for 5 years. If I learned anything from that experience, it was not to be afraid to experiment and not to be afraid of using any kind of material I could find and combining it. And I didn't want to be a glass artist, a painter, a sculptor, a ceramicist. I didn't want to be put in any of those boxes. So I decided the best way to do that is to work with all of those materials. And then I couldn't be confined by anything. I had always collected tumbleweeds and was drawn to them, but I didn't know why. Well, tumbleweeds, we always associate them with being round and being free to move about as they please. And so capturing them and putting them in a cube form, I feel like I don't know what it is, it's kind of a humorous thing, but it becomes a building block, it becomes something else that has another layer of meaning. Like, I would like to live in a tumbleweed, but I can't. So I can make blocks and create a structure that I could live in, and it would still be living inside of a tumbleweed. The longer I am on this path and the deeper I go into the work, the more it wants from me. And it seems that it becomes, at one point, kind of relentlessly specific about what it wants. And I don't always know what that's going to be. It might be a garden installation. It might be a public art piece. So I want to remain open to whatever the next step is. And I don't know that ahead of time. Being in this creative world is where I jump off cliffs. The starting point really comes more from a feeling. There's an idea there, but I'm not trying to paint something that I see in my head. If I really listen and listen to my intuition, which is a big part of how I work, and I make my choices from that place, then what I say yes and no to is critical. And so I try to always follow that. And I know when I've made the right decision. I certainly know when I've made the wrong one. Done that a few times. Everything that happened for me that had meaning happened at night. But what was interesting is part of that nocturnal dwelling was that I was able to have sightings of light that I wouldn't otherwise have, and they've haunted me for years. And I had a special rock, which was behind a tree fort, where I would go sit. More than once I would wake up on that rock the next morning and just make it into the house before my parents found out. The memories would be sketchy because it felt like a dream, but it wasn't really a dream. And I had a lot of visions of strange lights in the sky. I think sometimes the landscapes still have those memories floating in them. The darkness is the known, the light maybe is the unknown. The light is the mystery.
Really, there's only one reason I wake up in the morning, and that's so that I can come here and do whatever this is and whatever this means.
What part of me is like that leaf? What part of me is like that weed? That never seems to leave, with that connection with the body and time and the celebration of the passage of time.
But there are those times where nothing comes. And as Albert Pinkham Ryder once said, he made the analogy of his life being a bit like an inchworm, where you're crawling out on a branch and you're going along and you're on a path, and then you come to the end and you're just feeling out into space for the next footing. You're feeling out into nothingness. And so there are those days and sometimes those weeks that I'm feeling out into nothingness. And then it's hard to trust. The studio becomes a ritual. It is a discipline. And so if I show up, then I know eventually I'll get past that.
This building, when I saw it, it was like I knew right then and there that it was the next step in a journey, that it would have an effect on the work. I think maybe it's my point of sanity, so that I can take risks and I can experiment. I've been real protective of my process. That's why I work alone. And so to show any part of it, it's strange. And it's like having you look at my underwear. I always seem to work in a little bit of a reductionist way, where I add something and then take it back off again. How I got to be a minimalist, I'm not sure, because I haven't always been. It's, for me, less is more. And the taking away of things has been instrumental in the work. And it's the hardest thing to do, because then you have very little to rely on. Okay, just want to play with this. I'm looking for answers. Even a quarter of an inch sometimes makes a big difference. Placement becomes critical. I'll probably need to stare at this for a few days till it tells me what's next. The cactus that I collected and dried and harvested the veins from, They remind me of cicada wings, except on a very large scale. The piece I have over there, which is the cicada wings, they're not just put on there at random. You know, you just don't throw the wings on there and have it work. I cast it in 3 layers, and each wing is placed one at a time. And if they're in the wrong place, you know it, and you have to move it. Yeah. Kind of scary. So when I had these particular trees hanging at the studio, there were 5 of them, or 4 of them really, that were having a conversation. And I was taking them up and taking them down and trying different compositions. And it seems really important that the distance between the trees, it has a certain relationship, that it's not too even, there's a little bit of tension that occurs. And that's a kind of a magical point. I don't really know how to explain it. It doesn't happen with measuring. It happens with intuition, and that changes from the studio to the actual space that you install them in. So it's a little bit different here than it was in the studio. It's not quite the same composition. I refer to this as a forest installation, and that comes from a poem that I was reading by David Wagoner. It's about being lost in a forest and standing still and listening to the trees, but also listening to yourself and realizing that wherever you are, you're not really lost, and that you have to welcome that place, and that place is called here. This close looking, this beginning, this feeling each seed. Something about deciding which piece goes where seems to be really important. It becomes a meditation. You can't just place a seed anywhere and have it work. It has its own language, its own gesture. I'd say that just the work itself becomes a meditation, and it calms me, and it informs how I walk through the world. Sometimes I forget to be vulnerable, or I forget to open my heart, and out of fear of maybe not having the muses there for me, I'll start to close down. And I was reminding myself to keep my heart open and to be, as a friend told me once, exquisitely vulnerable. And if I can stay in that place, then that's how I get unstuck. When I come in here and work, it's just as much a dream world as when I'm sleeping. Dreams lead me to poems. Poems lead me to what I create. I hope to bring a focus, a new way of seeing, a new life to the objects I find. My collected specimens celebrate the endless cycles of change and rebirth in nature. I don't think about why I make my work. I don't really know. I can't say I make it for myself. I can't say I make it for other people. I just know it has to happen, and I don't even have a choice. So it goes out into the world, and it's my job to be a good steward. It's my job to be there for it.
and to make sure that as a translator, that I do the best job I can.
Welcome everyone to the Shemer Art Center. We are pleased to share with you our current exhibition by Mayme Kratz titled Devotions, and have the opportunity to talk with Mayme and hear from her about the works on display and her journey that has led to her creation of these images, which I understand includes some new works never shown before.
I thought I'd start with this piece that's to my left. It's titled Sunspot, and it's from an ongoing series. I do a lot of work with grasses, native grasses, also a lot of invasive grasses. I also use some native grasses as well if I'm out in more of a rural landscape. And it's an ongoing series that I've been doing for a number of years. It's very much about the light and the heat in the desert. They're all very bright, sunny pieces that at times feel parched. And this is something that I wanted to kind of express with the work. The Knot series is an ongoing series as well, and oftentimes it's plant life that I find while I'm out walking. And I'll take the weeds or grasses that I find and weave them into nests. It's a way of recording memory and journal keeping. It's been going for maybe 15 years, a little bit longer. The Dark Garden series came from a poem that I was reading. Poetry influences a lot of the work. It's a relatively new series, and there are references to landscapes and kind of those childhood memories that you get when you've been out wandering in the landscape and you're on the ground looking through the grasses, discovering snakes and insects, and just smelling the dirt, basically. It's one that I'm very fond of. There are several works to my left that are very dear to me. The wall work is a series that is from a residency I had in North Carolina, and I was able to basically have this lovely little studio on the edge of the Duke Forest. So every day I would go down into the forest and into the river and collect things, and I was able to soak water in the river and then take it back to my studio and soak it in tea. And so the pigments I was playing with pigments and working with papers, which is always a very freeing thing to do when you work with resins and heavy work. So whenever I have a residency, I try to work with paper pieces and kind of explore new things in that way. So the whole series, which is the Forest Study series, is an exploration of the forest and working with new materials. The piece below is it's actually part of a Palo Verde tree, and I titled it Tree Study. I came home one day and I had planted 30 years ago a Palo Verde tree in my front yard, which I just loved. And I came home and it had landed on the house. And so it didn't do any damage, thankfully, and they came and removed it, and I saved several chunks of that tree and decided to celebrate the tree with these pieces that are studies of nature. This work is titled Long After the Echo, and it too is from a series that's ongoing. It came about by spending time out in the wilderness in southern Utah in Bears Ears National Monument. There's a little place called Cedar Mesa, and it's wild and very sacred landscape. And at the same time that I've been out there, I often read poetry about that area, and I came across a poem that I'd like to read to you today. This is a poem by Simon J. Ortiz, and he is from Acoma Pueblo. It's titled Culture and Universe. 2 nights ago, in the canyon darkness, only the half moon and stars, only mere men. Prayer, faith, love, existence. We are measured by the vastness beyond ourselves. Dark is light, stone is rising. I don't know if humankind understands culture. The act of being human is not easy knowledge. With painted wooden sticks and feathers, we journey into the canyon toward the stone, a massive presence in midwinter. We stop. Lean into me, the universe sings in a quiet meditation. We are wordless. I am in you. Without knowing why culture needs our knowledge, we are one self in the canyon. And the stone wall I lean upon spins me wordless and silent to reach the stars and to the heavens within. It's not humankind, after all, nor is it culture that limits us. It is the vastness we do not enter. It is the stars we do not let own us. The Vanishing Light series came about by what I see while I'm going to sleep at night with my eyes closed. So it's an ongoing series, and it also involves native grasses and native plants. Oftentimes I use snakeweed, which I find while I'm hiking in Utah and in northern Arizona. Sometimes the pieces are quite large, and they're often punctuated with small items such as basically rattlesnake ribs that I find if I'm out in the landscape and I find a snake or any insects. I collect those and use those in the work. So it's an ongoing series. They're usually very dark. They're about the night sky. They reference long after the echo as well. It's like a closer view of a night sky. This piece is about basically a close looking at the night sky. So it's almost as if you were looking under the sky with a telescope and observing things under the microscope as well. They're also about a meditation. Years ago, trying to change like the chemistry in my body, and I started assembling these pieces as a way to kind of visualize my cells increasing in scale, and they came about that way. Some of them are quite large. I do really big pieces that are orange and red that are about the body. They're poppy seed pods. What I do is I get the pod and I saw it in half on the bandsaw and then place it. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle and a meditation.
Thank you, Mayme, so much for this personal tour of your exhibition. It is truly the art that we are pleased to reflect and honor for our Shemer Honors event.
Thank you, Shauna. I'm honored to be here.
As we close, we would like to thank again all of our sponsors and attendees who have made this year's Shemer Honor event successful. We would also like to remind everyone that Mayme's work will be on display at the Shemer Art Center through January 5th. We invite you to come in, view Mayme's incredible work, and support the nonprofit Shemer Art Center and its initiative that supports and showcases Arizona artists. Thank you for joining us for our 2022 Shemer Honors event.
Good night, and thank you from everyone at the Shemer Art Center.